reminded that. I said, I remember working 13 years for the same company, and I called out 2 days out of 13 years. And those days, that's when I was in those churches, and they had you had the watch night service. You would come to church on New Year's, and it was this big thing to bring in the New Year's on your knees. And so, because it was a union position, they had a point system, and you didn't get points. You didn't get points for New Year's Eve. You got points for New Year's Day because New Year's Day was a holiday. So you would just get 3 points for New Year's. And so the last 2 years that I worked down there, I took off New Year's Eve. And New Year's Eve back then was probably one of the busiest days of the season there. And so I was loyal to it, but to work and get ahead, they were never honorable people. One, because back then I was a man of color, and they just, it was always harder. And then it would kind of throw them off because of my disposition or the way I carry myself. That was always confusing as well too, because the clients took a liking to me, which even made it worse for my superiors, because they thought I wasn't good enough for some of these people. And so, it was always trickery. It was always, giving the high roller to this person or that person, boom, 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 or whatever, like it was this big deal. But, to me, I treated everybody equal across the board. So whether you were worth $1 billion or a couple $100 million or a couple 100,000, to me, you were a customer. And so I treated everybody like that. But I went through that, and so I understand what that is. And so we see how he gave him his the wrong daughter. And after many years of Jacob working faithfully for Laban, God instructed Jacob to return to the land of thy fathers. And naturally, Jacob was only willing to what? He was only going to do what? He was going to obey what God told him. But before he left, he revealed to Laban's daughter, he revealed to the daughters, the amazing divine principle of taking the wealth of the wicked and giving it to the just, or to the people of God, the righteous people. He began to tell them the principle that had been operating in his life as he worked for their father. Their father was a wicked man. Laban was wicked, right? And let's go here. Genesis chapter 31. Let me see, verse 6. And you know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father have deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. But God suffered him not to hurt me. See, it didn't hurt me. See, what people are doing to us, manipulating, they always got an angle, and I mean, they're always conniving and evil, and everything's always under the current. But that's why God said, I'm raising you up so you can see it. And I'm protecting you in the midst of these wicked people. And sometimes God has you around situations and people that aren't out, and you just want to get away from them. But let me tell you something. Sometimes you're in there and you just got to hang in there and leave. You got to do what you got to do. You got to work until God releases you. And normally when God releases you, he's releasing you from that place, but at the same time, he's releasing you and elevating you. Amen. You coming out with something, you're coming out with something. You're not going to leave like you came, So, and if he said, thus the speckle shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said, thus the ring stark shall be thy heir, then bore all the cattle, the ring star. That's verse 8. So whatever Jacob had said, Laban had said, really turned out to be. That's what God made it where you say the speckled cattle. So now he brings out all the speckled cattle. Now you done jam me up for 7 years. You done did this and that, and you figured that what's likely the odds that all these cattle are going to be speckles. So what happened was all the younger calves became speckled calves. And so when God was calling Jacob to leave to go back to his fathers, all that cattle and all the goods from working for that wicked man, he took with him. But it was based on the agreement that Laban did, and Laban he couldn't do anything about it. Verse 9, and thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. That's verse 9. God took the wealth of Laban, a wicked man who kept changing his rules of Jacob's compensation program, and gave his wealth to Jacob. See, people don't know who you are. People don't know. And some of these people, let me tell you something, some of these people that try to oppress us, look, they're in their graves to this day. They're in their graves to this day. But when God has a purpose for you and God has designed something for you, let me tell you something. All you got to do is be faithful and walk in it and through it. Now, the key thing about this is, I think it's let me see. I'm gonna go to Genesis 28. I'm gonna go to Genesis 28. I'm gonna go to Genesis 28, verse 20. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in the way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and remnant to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God, and this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. Now, I'll tell you now, what's unique about this particular verse is, he makes a vow. He makes a vow before this whole thing with God. And let me tell you something, and the key thing in this is, he really wasn't tithing. A lot of people like to call this tithing, but he really wasn't tithing like they like to use in the church to try to get you to get the money. Now, let me tell you something. It was even greater than that. He didn't have to, he was already a tither because he was from the seed of Abraham. He's a Levite. So he was already a tither. They're already tithers. He was already tithing. But what he did was he gave 10% above and beyond the tithes, you understand? Because the tithes back then, they understood that the tithe already belonged to God, and you didn't own that anyway. It's not like us where you get $100, amen, and you pay your electric, you figure out all the other stuff you got to do, and you try to give the 10%, or you try to manage and finagle with it. They didn't have that kind of understanding. It wasn't like that then. The 10% already, it wasn't yours. It wasn't yours to manage. It wasn't yours to take or borrow. No, he gave that 10%, which is above and beyond. And God blessed him 100-fold. And so what am I saying? When we as men and women of God, righteous men and women of God, realize that the 10th already, it belongs to him. And then, so when he blesses you, and the blessings come and you give even above the 10th, because, and that's what he did. And God bless him 100-fold. And here's even the beauty thing about it is we realized that how, he was being oppressed by oppressor. And the only way that he came out on top was God intervened. Amen. Because the enemy, 11, was trying to destroy him. That's why he changed his compensation in that program 10 times. But God intervened and allowed him to be blessed. So so Jacob knew that, if I gave him everything, whatever, I wouldn't be in this position as he was teaching Laban's daughters if God had not moved for me. And what I'm saying to you is God's about to move for a lot of you under the sound of my voice. And you got to remember that you couldn't be there. The only way that you got where you're going is God. That's the only way you're getting there. Y'all have to get that in your spirit. Jacob clearly covenanted with God that if he would bless him, if God would bless him, then surely Jacob, would give a tenth of all he received back to God. See, and so when you go into covenant with God, and God honors and God releases the covenant and the promise and the arrangement, amen. What you don't want to do is you don't want to get into there where you just pouring the stuff in for yourself. Listen, let me tell you something. When you can't give God enough. We can't help enough people. We can't do enough. The only thing that we can do is do everything we can and more and above that, because guess what? It just makes the harvest greater, and it allows you to have a stream of wealth because God can trust you more, because guess what? It's not clogged up. You're not overstocked. And what has happened to a lot of you is you're hoarders. You're overstocked. You got too many clothes in your closet. You got too many pair of shoes that you ain't even wearing. You got too much money here and there. And so, if you learn to release that stuff, if you learn, you gave the tithes, you can't even talk about. That belongs to God. But then the more that God gave you above the tithes, okay, the stuff that he gave you beyond that, because of the principle of the kingdom, and when you learn to release that, then God can bless you with the more than enough, because there's room enough for you to receive it. Why? Because when God puts it in, he comes in on your left side, that goes out on your right side, because that's what you're doing. You're allowing yourself to be that instrument, the art of transfer, where God's people can be blessed through a stream of wealth. And God will bless us. God is going to bless us. Because he was from the loins of Abram. And verily, they that are of the sons of Levi, look in Hebrews, Hebrews 7:5. And verily, they that are the sons of Levi, who have received the office of the priesthood, have a commandment to take tithes of the people according to the law, that is, of their brethren, though they come out of the loins of Abraham. Hebrews 7:5. So he was already a tither. The tithes already come. That's automatic. That's God's stuff. But more and above, because we understand who God is, and everything that we have belongs to him. And when you get into the point in a position of being in a space called God, having God experiences, and God exposes himself to you, you're not trying to rob and rip people off. And you know what? And you don't have to get in those lines. You don't have to do any of that stuff. All you got to do is what? Follow God's principles. Whatever you say to God, do that, and watch God honor that vow. And I'm not talking about, you get people that they want to look at people based on, on their status. You want to pull somebody's credit. You want to know the bank account. You want to know this, that, and all that other stuff. Listen, let me tell you something, brothers and sisters too. Listen, you must stay away from them crazy people. Listen, they need to be by themselves, and you let them be by themselves. That's exactly what they need. Because guess what? God's grace and mercy is for all of us. All you got to do is follow these principles, the kingdom principles of God, and watch you surpass those people. Remember how we talked about earlier that I sensed that God was elevating. He was raising you up. He's taking you to a higher realm. And you're going to look down and see the people that were chattering and talking and all that other stuff. The confusion, the manipulation. You want to manipulate and control somebody's life and you can't even control your own.